Excellent, excellent. I don't know whether you could hear it say recording in progress, but it's recording in progress. So Sister Yoan Lin Nguyen was born in South Vietnam and came to the United States by way of Louisiana. She's a graduate from Emmanuel College in Boston, Massachusetts, with a liberal arts degree and has a certificate in media literacy and master teacher from Los Angeles. She has worked across the country in various Daughters of St. Paul media centers at different levels and in different functions. But those of you who know her know what a beautiful witness to Christ and the merciful love of God that she is. And we are delighted to have her join us today to talk about her journey of faith. And thank you, sister. Welcome.
Thank you, Frank and all, for inviting me to share my story. I'm very humble with this invitation. So we all like stories. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes.
So we all like stories, and we read from, scriptures from the Old Testament, our fathers in faith, Abraham and Isaac, and on, Moses, David. So, and then in the New Testament, we hear the story of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, and the apostles. And then, of course, we learn about the lives of the saints, men and women who went before us in all states of life. And so today I'm humble to share with you my own journey of faith. And so I want to begin with Psalm 103. It's just a very short phrase from Jerusalem Bible. Bless Yahweh from the depth of my being, his holy name. Bless Yahweh, my soul. Never forget all his acts of kindness. The phrase that's never forget all his acts of kindness. For me, it resonates my whole journey from Vietnam to United States. So I was born in Vietnam in Nha Trang, a little town called Nha Trang near Cam Ranh Bay, and in 1968. And my family's very loving, very devout, and so I was 9 years old when the country fell to the north. So that's the fall of Vietnam in 1975. And so in 1975, my dad was in the military, Navy, and he's like in Navy intelligence. So basically, when he had good rapport with the U.S., when the advisors comes, he would take them around and show them around, So they were trying to hold up the base, the Cam Ranh base. But unfortunately, it fell. And so my mom, I was 9 years old then, she took my sisters, my two sisters, back to Saigon. And Dad was still in the base, And so Mom, once she realized that the country fell, she destroyed all the informations, every pictures, every documents that we have. So we don't have baby pictures at all, So so because she's just afraid that, if they find out Dad was serving in the military, the family would be in jeopardy. So anyway, so we made it back to the village, to Saigon. And then after that, then Dad was united with us in Cam Ranh. That's where my aunt lived. So on the Easter Vigil of 1977, it was harder to leave. And so my aunt decided to escape, taking her families without letting us know, because they can only fit so many people in the boat, So, but providentially, my brother, who usually go to my aunt's place and play with my cousins, he realized that they were packing up. And so then he went back home and he said, Dad, how come Aunt is, packing up stuff, So my dad went and confronted my aunt, of course, During those times, as you know, we really don't really trust in even our relatives, And but then my aunt felt that they didn't have enough room. But then finally, somehow my dad convinced, her to let the families go. And so we escaped that night, the Easter Vigil. And there were 77 people in a small fishing boat made of wood. 77 people. And there were like a couple of pregnant women and a few babies just born. Even my sisters, my youngest sisters, she didn't even know how to crawl yet. She was only a few months. So then they took us all underneath the fishing net, so that the aim is to go out to the international line, And then once you pass the international line, then you will be away from the government, but then also you are in the mercy of whatever countries accept refugees. And there's so many ships that pass us by, but they couldn't pick us up, And so first, the Russian ship picked us up, and we didn't realize it was a Russian ship until we got on board. And then the men saw a flag, and they realized, they either bring us to Russia or they're going to send us back to Vietnam for re-education camp. So we were praying so hard. My mom said, yeah, we have a statue of Blessed Mother on our boat. Our Lady was on our boat. And so we were praying the rosaries and we were invoking Blessed Mother. So Our Lady of Voyager was in that boat, so that, we felt that security, and that's the devotion of, my parents and the people in the boat. And so, so then the men said, oh, okay, since it's not a military ship, why don't we just ask them to give us food and water? So they gave us some bread and water, but we were afraid to eat because we were afraid that it's poison. So they let us down, and we still didn't touch the water or the bread at all, for another couple of days. And then because it was just a tourist ship, that's why they let us down. And then we encountered Japanese ship. And the Japanese ships were the oil tank ship. So when they brought us up to, it's a big, big ship. But anyway, it's smelling oil, you can tell, So once they got okay from their country to accept refugees, so we were like the first refugees group in Japan. And so then when it's okay, the captain told us, like, if we didn't pick you up 2 hours, later, the typhoon was going through. I said, well, God really looking up on us, oh, bless the Mother. And so, so then we went to Japan, and of course, they put us in a small village where there were a French missionary priest and a few Japanese sisters who worked with the elderly. And so we were surrounded by, good people, and but even though the language barriers, we didn't really understand. So we speak a lot of sign language and smile and, and try and pick up, some words in Japanese. So my mom said, well, I don't want to wait until we get to the United States, for you to make your first communion, because I was 9 years old then. So she asked the priest, the interpreter. So I made my first communion in Japan to a French missionary priest, and God only know my first confession. So, so I left that. I said, okay, Lord, I didn't do anything bad. Everything is in the ocean. So anyway, so I made my first communion there, and it was a beautiful experience. And another thing about part of the story is that we lived in Japan for 6 months. And 1977, of course, we don't have cell phone like nowadays, right? Oh, here, call your uncle or whoever, because 3 of my uncles left in 75 when the US was there, and, so they left without their families. And so nobody knew that we escaped Vietnam and that we ended up in Japan. But somehow my youngest uncle, who lived in New Orleans, went to a restaurant Sunday morning, eat a bowl of pho, if you know, like Vietnamese food, a bowl of pho, opened the magazine, reading in Vietnamese, saw pictures, and he said, that looked like my sister-in-law. So he contacted whoever wrote the article, said, is this, what I'm thinking, and he realized that we were in Japan. And so that's how they sponsor us over to the United States. And that's, to me, that's providence, because I don't know, it can't be chance or anything, but it's providence guiding and about some other, and we always contributed to Our Lady, And so we ended up in New Orleans, and it was hard, being refugees and being migrants, especially nowadays we're talking about like a lot of people want to come to the United States, it's hard. And that's why Dad was like always, the beginning was trying to live near the water, because that's all they know, right? That's all they know is like fishing. Go out there fishing. You don't have to talk, to anybody except your fellow, people. And then also we all live in a small little community with church surrounded. And so we can go to church, and then we can go and just make our daily bread, And then when they come back with the shrimp and the fish, then we can, I remember my mom and myself, we go out to the street and just kind of sit there and then just have fresh shrimp, and sell it to the neighbors, And that's how you kind of start your way up. And then later on, Dad picked up some English, and then he started to, work as a waiter and just odd job, in the grocery shopping centers, just bagging, in those days you bag, And then later on, he worked for the welding company. And so, and he got to go to Africa, and that's how he became American citizen. It forced him to become American citizen because he had to go to Africa for work. And, but, that's the journey of faith, hope, and love, you see that, I can see that in my, my parents. It was hard, but something that nurtured me with their faith. Yeah, and so that's pretty much, yeah, pretty much just how I received my call too. When I was in Japan, that Japanese sisters asked us, like, what would you like to become when you grow up? She asked me and my sister. My sister, I want to get marry. I want to marry, and I said, I want to become a sister's. But then when I came to the States, I had so much fun with friends, and so when I met the Daughters of St. Paul in New Orleans in 1984, I was 16 years old. So a friend of mine invited me for a retreat. And I said, okay, I'll accompany her, but not want to become a sister's. And so my motivation was just accompany her. But then once I met the Daughters of St. Paul, I realized, oh, they're missionary sisters, they can go here and there, kind of remind me like military, when we're little, move around, adventures, So then I still have that. I said, okay, even though I really don't know, I'm still learning English, but why not? I'll just doing applications and then join the convent and get to travel around, and especially when you're being educated by the nuns, So Mom and Dad always stress on education, higher education, even though I don't think they really have passed high school, in Vietnam. but they always stressed that when they came to the States. And so that's what I had in mind, you know. And so I applied and into the convent to be educated by the nuns, but not becoming a sister. Not until, you know, a few years after high school, then I realized, oh, there's something here at the convent. You know, there's something here with the Daughters of St. Paul, even though they're not Vietnamese community. A lot of friends ask, why do you enter a non-Vietnamese community? You know, meanwhile, you have sisters who catechize you in Vietnamese, you know, and but I like to travel. So then, so I enter, you know, after high school, I apply, I discerned, made a deeper discernment with the Daughters of St. Paul. And so I did all my formations in Boston. And then I made my vows, 2 years of novitiate, and made my vows and went to Charleston. Is my first, I call my first love because it was my first house, smaller community. And so I was here in 91 to 93, and then they sent me back to Boston for college. And so I did my years of college there. And then after that, right after college, they said, can you fill out your will and your paperwork? We're sending you to Rome. I said, what? I just graduated from college, and here you send me to Rome and to study another language? I was like, so I pray about it. And then I said, well, this is the only time, you know, maybe only time to experience a walk in the holy city, in a sense, you know. So I took that leap of faith and went over and spent 1 month studying Italian, walking in St. Peter's. The first time I remember going to St. Peter's, Basilica of St. Peter's. We didn't know what's going on, but once the gate opened, you see all these priests going to their little altar, you know, and they have mass all in different languages. And the first time we follow, it was another language. We didn't even understand. We know mass was, you know. And then after a while, we caught up. We said, oh, yeah. And then we said, English. So then we followed the right priest for the right, you know, mass in English. And yeah, so spending the first month just studying Italian, stretching our head. And then after that, we gathered at our general house in Rome. And there were like 20 of us from 10 countries, sisters from Africa, from Latin America. It was just England and France. It was just beautiful to see the Pauline charism, you know, even though we're from different countries, different languages. But there's something unique. It reminds me of our universality of the Catholic Church, you know, of our faith. And but that's the joy of just being in an international community. And then we were able to walk where our founders walk and everything. So then after that, like a month before we came, no, not a month, just a couple of days before we were supposed to come back to the States and made our final vows. We have a phone call. We said, you're going to have a private mass with the Pope. I said, really? We were all excited. And so that night we all gathered up and prepared the mass. So they were like, they can fit only 30 of us in the private chapel. And it was Pope John Paul II. And so we had mass with him, and then 20 of us, and then 10 diplomats in the back. And so after that, then we all lined out in the back, outside. Some of you probably smell, but outside. And then he just greet each one of us, and then he gave us a little rosaries. But it was so beautiful. And then after that, my experience, I said to myself, well, if John Paul II survived everything that he survived and became who he was, I can do that. I can say yes to the Lord, even though I don't know everything, you know, what's laid in front of me. So I really took his examples, you know, where he went through war and experience and everything, but lost his parents and also his only brother. But the Blessed Mother helped him, you know, through his life. And so I think that's one of the examples. And then after I shook his hands, you know, of course, it confirmed my vocations. And I went back to the States and say yes to the Lord for the rest of my life. So I made final vows in 1997. And then from there, they just sent me from north to east to west, all the way to Hawaii for 7 years. And then I get to travel to Samoa and Guam, you know, to do mission work. And then I was able to go back to New Orleans for 5 years to station there near home. So after 30 years. But before that, was 14 years ago, I was able to go back to Vietnam to actually walk, you know, and see the place where I was born and travel from tour from north to the south and see, you know, the faith of the people and you know, how things are going at home. And yeah, so that's how the Lord continued to lead me. And that's basically, my thing is that example of all the saints, you know, no matter who we are or where we're coming from, you know, we're part of that salvation history where we're attuned to the movement of the Spirit, and just be aware of, you know, who we are, where we're coming from, and where we're heading. And so each one of us have a story. So I think that's. So anyway, I just wanted to end with a prayer from Mother Teresa. And then if you have any questions, you know, or if you have any questions now, I can end the prayer after, if you don't have an ending prayer.
Well, if you want to end with the prayer at the end of Q&A, that'd be great. So.
Okay. So I'm open to any questions, if it's in clarity or whatever.
Sister, your last name is Nguyen.
Yes.
And I grew up in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, and there is a large contingent of Nguyens in that part of the world.
Yes.
Are you all related?
Much. I know that's the question. It's like Smith, you know.
Is it really? Okay. No, that's fair.
So,
I just didn't know that.
Yeah. So Nguyen is actually, the history of Nguyen is, the history of Vietnam is just pretty much survival. There's a saying that we're like 1,000 years under Chinese, 100 years under France, and, you know, on and on, you know. So, but the Nguyen is the last dynasty in Vietnam, and it's the longest dynasty. So it's pretty much like 97% of Vietnam is under Nguyen.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
So I really don't need to do. So I really don't need to do the genealogy, or you know,
a lot of people.
People say, "Am I related to Irish or Scottish or whatever?"
Yeah, it's pretty clear. There's a singular path.
Yes, and even our last president is Nguyen, you know, it's part of And then it's always like, and then there's a Vu and Shan, you know, but they're shorter. History doing and then some Lam or whatever, they more like a Chinese also. So if you ever go to Vietnam, the northern part is more Chinese influence, and then the southern is more French influence. And you can see the architectures and the, you know, the food and the so music and things. Yeah.
So the country itself is more receptive of religions now?
Well, 14 years ago when I went back, we have some sisters there who's kind of like in the country, you know, for almost 10 or 12 years. 15 years. And they still kind of like I wouldn't say underground. I mean, they live like normal people, but they wouldn't say, you know, we're new religious orders, you know, whatever. They kind of tolerate, you know, but they still tap into a lot of things, communications, like if you have a big celebrations of something, gathering of people, you need to ask permission from the government first to have that. So they kind of still, you know, control that kind of stuff. You don't hear much about it, but you still, you know. Yeah. So I hope that answered your questions. Yeah.
Did, Sister, is there free movement from the north to the south in Vietnam?
Yes. So it's different from like North Korea and South Korea now, you know, like that was like Vietnam before. But now it's one country, one government. But you can still see that. So it's like before, like I have relatives who live in like 1954, the country divided, you know, North and South. And so Dad's family moved, and most Catholic, moved from the North down to the South. We call it first Exodus. And so you see a lot of Catholics down in the South, you know, and so some of my relatives still live in the North. And they're like now, like North Korea, you know, that's you know, and because the government only let you know what you know.
Yeah.
So, but now the movement is more. And then when you go down the south of Saigon, Ho Chi Minh now, but Saigon formerly, there's more like British. They have more banking there now.
Okay.
You know. And there's a lot of tourists from India and like those kind of stuff. So and as you know, nowadays, even, you know that like if you go Macy or whatever, there's a lot of things made in Vietnam now, you know, hats and stuff. And, you know, sometimes like, whoa, you know, even Advent candles, you know.
Yeah.
So there are like 80 something millions people, but opportunity wise, it's still kind of lacking. And about 14 years ago, when I went back, I asked, like, you know, how much does it cost to go to a semester of university? They say it's only $200 US dollars for whole S. And then the nicest job that you can have is for $30 a month. And you can see $1 go a long way, you know.
Yeah.
So that's when I went back, you know, when they see $100 bill.
Yeah.
American new $100. That's like a treasure. Like, you know.
Did you must read a lot because you're with the daughters, right? Have you ever read The Sympathizer? It's about
I heard about it.
It's about it's a novel, but it's about a Vietnamese operative getting himself and his family out of with the fall of Saigon. So I just thought maybe our book club just read it several months ago, and it was really fascinating because I didn't know much about you know, how that, you know, what the transition was, and it was very interesting. Really piqued my interest about Vietnam.
Yes, and then you can also read Cardinal Van Tuan, who was house arrest in prison for 13 years. He's like the nephews of the last president, Ngo Dinh Diem. Yeah.
And he's written some beautiful, sometimes I see him in the Magnificat, right? Some of his writings are, they'll put in that, beautiful writings. Beautiful writings.
Yes, and he's well known, you know, around the world. Some Africans call him Uncle Francis. But his work translated all around. His works, because when he was in house arrest, a young boy just gave him like a calendar, and so he just wrote a little message, because it was he just became an archbishop, and so then he just bring it out, and then the people save all those messages, and then when he became vice president of Pontifical Peace and Justice in Vatican, they gathered all that up and then became a book of his testimony. Yeah.
Awesome. Very good. What are you working on now at the Daughters downtown? What's one of your special projects?
Oh, well, before we have staff, but now, I've been a regional vocational director for Southeast. And then also I coordinate outreach. Before, you know, sometimes I do managers of the Pauline Books and Media in different locations. And then depends on the needs, you know. And then also I do bookkeeping, you know, in various places, whatever I needed in different locations. So.
Sister,
and then sometimes like I do Lectio Divina, you know, and then also media awareness. Sometimes we watch movies, you know, in other locations, and then we try to how to integrate faith and cultures and find a theme that we meaningful that we can you know understand. Also, like trying to really see what is the director, what is their aim, what is, you know, their priority. Do they treat the minority okay, or do they treat, you know, yeah, I mean, just various social issues, you know. Okay. And do they really respect, you know, the faith of people and the dignity of the human person? Awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sister Lynn, this is Clayton. Just a couple of observations. I don't know if it was the same when you were departing or escaping from Vietnam, but I've been blessed to have the opportunity to travel throughout Southeast Asia, never into Vietnam, but over it dozens and dozens of times. And in the South China Sea, I was always amazed, and this in the context of how dangerous it must have been. But if you fly at night, you feel when you look down upon the sea, there's so many boats that you literally feel like you can step from one to the next. And I'm assuming most of them are fishing boats. So the fact that you got out is truly amazing, because it's just, the first time you ever see it, you look at it and you go, is that real? There's so many boats out in the South China Sea. That's just an observation. But also, Emily and I are readers of the Magnificat, and the meditations, especially those of the Vietnamese saints, are truly incredible and moving. And then my last question is, we had a chance to go, because we travel so much, we went to, I've got to look it up here again, to St. Charles Borromeo in Morganton, North Carolina. And when we walked in, it was correct me if I'm pronouncing this correctly or not, the Hmong service. Have you heard of that?
Hmong?
It's called HMONG service, Catholic
yes,
service.
Yes, probably. It's Hmong is also another ethnics. Yeah. Yeah. So like in is it like another country like near Laos, or you know, or Cambodia?
So it's just a different ethnic tradition based on the Catholic liturgy, I guess, for lack of
Hmong is like probably just like the Hmong people, you know.
Okay, the Hmong. Okay. Yeah. From the north part of Vietnam, I think. No?
Yes, like in Vietnam itself, there's like 54 minority ethnics.
Right.
So when you actually walk up in the mountains, you know, there's people that you can tell by, it's almost like a native sort of, you know, and you see that they make their own little shirts and what ethnics they are, and they go about, you know, doing the irrigations of the lands and things like that, but they're not educated. So a lot of time people from this village would go up there and try to give them some kind of education, because it is simple.
Yeah, it's the different ethnic groups. I know, and I'll mention this just briefly in my talk about China, is that you can go 40 miles and they can't understand each other because they speak a different dialect.
Yeah, Cantonese or Mandarin, yeah.
Yeah. So they switched to Mandarin to be able to communicate, or Cantonese.
Yeah, so in Vietnam, it's one country, but like it's like here in the United States, English, you know, either depends on if you go to you're a New Yorker and Rhode Islander or Bostonian, you know, you have that kind of like little accents and certain terms that you use, you know. So Vietnamese is north to the south. It's the same language, but it depends on how you use it. Like the word mother, like ma or mẹ, you know. So when we say mẹ, you know where you're coming from. And those who use ma, you know it's mother too, but it's like depends on, yeah. So it just kind of distinguish, you know, between like what regions you're from. So.
Right.
Well, sister, it's almost been 2 generations since the fall of Saigon, and I think that you know, I think it's important for folks to remember, you know, the kind of persecution the church felt, you know, after the communist victory there. How do you remember the response of the new regime to the church in South Vietnam?
Well, just like anything, they of course always seen as a threat, you know, and a fear, you know, fear, and so that's why I controlled the communications, you know, and the spread, and so that's why even now, like I said, you know, when you want a big celebrations, even to print a Bible or print anything religions, they have to approve it. That's why even our own mission of publications, we can't do publications now, you know, unless you establish already, like orders already established there. I went to Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City, and I see they have, the religious sisters have a book centers, bookstore, you know, but everything they printed there, they had to kind of pass by the government, so.
Are there actually different versions of the same texts that are government approved, or do the daughters just simply kind of stand firm, and if there's a disagreement on text, you just simply don't include it?
Yeah, right now our sisters do more on, they have a website, you know, and like just kind of be neutral, you know, as long as you live there, work there, and not make a big deal against the government or talk about whatever, you know, or make it like a, you know, a gathering, yeah, something, protest or whatever, and you're okay, you know, but still they always have a camera in the convent where they just make sure whoever knock on the door is not, because like in Vietnam, you know, like even it's not here like you own a house, you know, there it's like you can have your own house or your own church. They can come in and take it away anytime. As I remember, like my grandparents' grave, you know, like in Nha Trang, you know, they go and they say, well, we want to make this a resort. You need to move your dead. So pretty much they had to cremate everybody and move, you know, and then that's how they take the land. So it's not really like your own at all. So not like in the US, you know, you buy a piece of property and you pay, and, you know, pay property tax or whatever. But there you live, it looks like you own your business, but they can come in. Or you can make some kind of produce or whatever, but certain portion, you know, of course, going to the government.
So is there...
so anyway, yeah.
Nope, sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
So Clayton mentioned, you know, Vietnamese martyrs. Are there heroic figures or martyrs within the Vietnamese Catholic Church that you find particular inspiration in looking to?
Yes, well, there's so many martyrs and holy people, you know, during that time of persecutions, but only like 117 were named, you know, were proclaimed saints, canonized saints. And among them, of course, some French missionaries. But actually 2 of them actually from my home parish where I was baptized. So when I went back, I actually, you know, walked the steps and, you know, actually see So, but their faith, like recently, I don't know if you heard, but there was a Dominican priest. He's only, I think, 41, and he was here in confession up in the mountains in the mission land, and he was actually killed doing here in confession. So for me, that's, you just never know when is your time, but it's always that awareness that we live each hour, each day, in the mercy of God, in the grace of God. And so always trying to live that and to be aware, and that awareness, that the Spirit move us. And that's how we follow the Master. That's how we follow Jesus. It's always looking how he lived his life and how do I live my life according to the gospel. But that's like a day in and day out, it's not easy, especially at workplace or, people doesn't, understand where you stand and things like that. So, but especially for me, because of Pauline Books and Media, the centers, anybody can walk in. That's the thing. Anybody can walk in, and sometimes they're like, oh, sometimes they just kind of walk in and they're like, they think they're in the wrong place. A lot of times it's like they realize that, oh, this place is holy. I'm not worthy enough to walk, or something that they believe, but they deny, or they walk in with their friends and they don't want their friends to know, who knows what the reason why, but we're there, they encounter, hopefully they encounter Christ through us, and I think that's, at least, we bring them into prayer. And a lot of times they ask us questions, because even recently, a lawyer from Lexington, Kentucky came, he's not even Catholic. He's been coming to Charleston for 30-something years. And every time he comes, he emails us and says, can you save me all these books, and then I'll come by and pick them up. So then this last time he just expressed that he's not even Catholic, but he bring it back to Kentucky and share with his friends who are also attorneys, So I said, just sow the seed and let God work.
Well, I've always associated the Daughters Media Centers with Pope Francis's description of the church needing, these spiritual aid stations and, a place to rescue souls. Is over the years, as you've just described, I mean, are there kind of common wounds? I mean, there are so many wounds in this culture. I mean, what do you see among the people who kind of come through and are looking for Christ and what the Daughters offer?
Well, it's various stages in spiritual life, people go through, and I think I always trying to respect that where, because ultimately God wants all of us to be with him, and in our journey, we kind of like in different stages. And so just there being able to imbue myself with the word of God and listen to what God is speaking in and through that person, and what can I offer as part of that mystical body. And like, for example, a young man who came in from New York, he said, oh, can I, do you know where the priest, because I've been doing witchcrafting for 20 years. And he wanted to turn around, and so then, we just suggested to him to go to a priest who do exorcisms, things like that. And a lot of time people just come in and say, oh, I raised my kids, all Catholic school and everything, but they're not practicing, so that's very common things now, it's like, if you worry about your children like that, how much God worry, how much God continue to reach out, and he's always journey with them no matter where they're at now, just continue to pray for them and be there for them. And so because Mother Teresa said faith is a gift, you can't force the person. I mean, you try your best and I say try your best and let God do the rest. I would say that.
Well, you mentioned Mother Teresa and one of the things that she represents is that beautiful example of seeing Christ in everyone she encounters. And that is oftentimes one of the great struggles for all of us sinners, seeing Christ in everyone in front of us. Do you have any insights into that in your journey?
Well, we all continue on that journey, and day by day we ask for that grace to see and to walk in His way. And we're not all perfect, right? So we will all have something to work at, some kind of things to grow closer to the Lord. And that's why as long as I've been patient with myself, and ask Him for that grace so that I can be patient with others people's journey, sometimes it's very hard, because without society, we want instant, everything's instant. I want my way or no way, or I want this to solve right away. But it's like the Lord is always like, that waiting, that whole sense of that kind of give you peace, that no, it's not under my control. I don't want, God is in control, right? God is in control of the situation. God is in control of my daily living. And so that's the grace that I always pray for. It's like to let go of whatever I wanted to control of, situation or people or whatever, and respect that space, that sacred space in each person. And that's a day in, day out. I mean, like, and that's, of course, first of all, in our life first, and then in others, in our brothers and sisters. And yeah, so that's why Mother Teresa said, the Daughter of St. Paul's, our mission is really a corporal works of mercy, She's feeding the hungry and, and everything, but we are like the intellectual, the poor in spirit, poor in, so that's part of our charism, is to share that as Paul venture out, different places to share the word of God, to share that message.
I heard an anecdote attributed to Mother Teresa once where she spoke to a fellow sister and said, there comes Jesus in the form of that very annoying person. So.
Yep, because, like in families, you have all different or workplace, and then a lot of time you rub elbows with one another, and then and then that's basically the Lord is molding each one of us each day, whatever situation or that we find ourselves. And a lot of times certain things, the Lord said, you say, why this, Lord, but He said, let's just take a positive bent to it. It's like the Lord is molding me in some way, somehow. But just as long as I asked Him for the graces to be able to see and to accept the reality of that. So.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
This has been great, sister.
Thank you for this opportunity to share my story. And someday I'd love to hear all of your stories too, how God working in through you.
Well, thank you, sister. Thank you so much. Do you want to close with a prayer?
Yes. This prayer is actually by the prayer that Mother Teresa pray a lot. So, and there's a song too, but I'll pray this prayer. Dear Jesus, help me to spread thy fragrance everywhere I go. Flood my soul with thy spirit and love. Penetrate and possess my whole being so utterly that all my life may only be the radiance of thine. Shine through me and be so in me that every soul I come in contact with may feel thy presence in my soul. Let them look up and see no longer me, but only Jesus. Stay with me, and then I shall begin to shine as you shine. So to shine as to be a light to others. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so very much, sister. And thank you all for joining us.
God bless you.
Thank you.
We will post this video on the website, and first Friday in March, we'll be back at the Diocese Meeting Hall, and John Carroll will be our speaker. So thank you all again very much for joining us. God bless you all.
Thank you.